It was a bright and warm afternoon when he decided to visit the river. The sun was shining high in the sky, and a gentle breeze was blowing, making the leaves of nearby trees sway softly. The sound of water flowing over the rocks created a calm and peaceful feeling, and he had been looking forward to this quiet moment all week. Life had been busy and stressful, and he wanted to take a break from work and daily responsibilities. The river seemed like the perfect place to relax and clear his mind. He walked along the soft, muddy bank, enjoying the smell of fresh water mixed with the scent of grass and wildflowers that grew along the edge. Birds chirped happily in the trees, and he could see small insects gliding over the water's surface. The world seemed so calm and perfect that it almost felt like time had slowed down. He found a large, flat rock near the riverbank and decided to sit down. He took off his shoes and let his feet touch the cool water. The sensation was refreshing, and he could feel the tension leaving his body. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the sound of the river and enjoying the sun on his face. It was one of those rare moments when everything felt right in the world. He had no idea that in just a few minutes, the peaceful day would turn into one of the most frightening experiences of his life. Suddenly, a scream shattered the calm. It was high-pitched, urgent, and filled with fear. His eyes snapped open, and he scanned the area to see where the sound was coming from. The scream was coming from a spot a little downstream where the river bent and widened. He saw a young girl, no older than 8 or 9, struggling in the water. She had fallen in, and the current was pulling her away from the bank. Her small arms flailed as she tried to keep her head above the water, but the current was too strong for her. Panic was written all over her face, and her wide eyes searched for help. People nearby were frozen in shock. Some were shouting, unsure what to do, while others ran along the bank calling her name. But no one moved quickly enough to reach her in time. The girl was slipping farther into the middle of the river with every passing second. He felt a sudden surge of fear and adrenaline. He knew he had to act fast. He didn't stop to think about the danger to himself. His mind was focused only on the girl and the urgency of the situation. Without hesitation, he jumped up and ran toward the water. His heart was pounding, and his palms were sweaty, but he didn't let fear control him. The river looked much stronger and faster up close. He could see the waves forming around rocks and small branches, and he knew that the current would make it extremely difficult to reach her. Still, he had no choice. Every second that passed could mean the difference between life and death. He paused at the water's edge for a brief moment, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He looked at the girl, who was now struggling even more, her little hands reaching desperately for something to hold on to. The water was up to her shoulders, and she was tiring quickly. He could see her face twisted in fear, and her eyes met his for a brief moment. It was a look that begged for help, a silent plea that he could not ignore. He ran into the river. The water was colder than he expected, and it shocked his body for a moment. But he pushed forward, fighting against the pull of the current. Each step was difficult, and the water tried to push him back, but he moved carefully, keeping his eyes on the girl. He could see her drifting further away, and panic started to rise in his chest. He whispered words of encouragement, trying to calm both himself and her. "I'm coming. Hold on. Don't give up," he shouted, hoping the sound of his voice would give her some hope. The river was unpredictable. One moment the water would be shallow, allowing him to walk, and the next moment it would rise to his chest, pulling at his legs. The rocks beneath the surface were slippery, and he had to be careful with every step. He felt a mixture of fear and determination. Fear for the danger he was facing, and determination to save the girl no matter what. His mind focused only on one goal, to reach her and pull her to safety. Meanwhile, the girl was panicking. She tried to scream for help, but the sound of rushing water drowned out her voice. Her small body was being pulled downstream, and she was exhausted from struggling against the current. He could see her little legs kicking, trying to stay afloat, but it was clear she could not last much longer without help. His heart ached as he saw her fear and helplessness. He picked up his pace, moving as quickly as the river allowed. He reached out toward her, stretching his arms as far as possible. She saw him and seemed to find a moment of hope, reaching toward him desperately. "I'm here," "I'm here," he shouted, trying to keep her calm. The water was cold, and his muscles were straining, but he didn't stop. He knew that giving up was not an option. Every step was a battle. The river pushed against him, trying to sweep him away, and he had to fight with every ounce of strength in his body. But the thought of the girl, so small and vulnerable, kept him moving forward. He imagined what her family must be feeling, imagining the terror of losing her. That thought made him even more determined. The moment he reached her, he extended his arms and grabbed her tightly. She clung to him, shivering and scared, but relieved to have found someone who could save her. He spoke softly to her, trying to calm her racing heart. "It's okay. I've got you. Don't worry. You're safe now." Even as he held her, the river was still strong, and moving back to the bank was going to be just as difficult as reaching her. But in that moment, he felt a strange mixture of fear and purpose. He knew he could not fail. He tightened his grip on the girl, keeping her as close as possible, and started to move carefully toward the shore, step by step. Fighting against the current, the people on the bank were shouting. Some trying to guide him, others calling emergency services. He barely noticed, focused entirely on the girl in his arms and the path back to safety. The struggle was intense, but every time he stumbled or almost lost his balance, he reminded himself that giving up was not an option. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he reached shallow water near the riverbank. He helped the girl step onto solid ground, both of them panting and shivering. The relief was overwhelming. People rushed forward, helping them out of the water and wrapping them in blankets. The girl clung to him, crying softly, her fear slowly giving way to relief and gratitude. For a few moments, the world seemed to stop. The danger had passed, and both of them were safe. He looked at the girl's face and saw a mixture of awe and thankfulness. In that moment, he realized that his life had changed in an instant, and so had hers. One small action, taken without thinking, had made a huge difference. Even after leaving the river, the memory of the struggle and the terror remained vivid. The sun continued to shine, birds chirped, and the river flowed peacefully, as if nothing had happened. But for him, the afternoon would never be the same. It was a day when courage, fear, and hope all came together in a single, unforgettable moment. And in that moment, he didn't know that this day would mark the beginning of a special connection. One that would last far beyond the riverbank and grow into a bond he could never have imagined. The river was calmer near the bank, but the current was still strong. He could feel the tug of the water against his legs as he held the girl tightly in his arms. She was shivering uncontrollably, her little body trembling from the cold. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, and she kept clutching his shirt, as if letting go would mean disappearing into the river forever. He whispered reassuring words, trying to calm her. But his own heart was still racing from the effort it had taken to reach her. Every breath he took was heavy. Every movement against the water felt like a battle. But he knew he could not stop now. He glanced around quickly. The riverbank was crowded with people who had gathered to see what was happening. Some were cheering him on, while others were frozen in fear, unsure how to help. He could hear shouts of encouragement, people calling out, "You can do it. Keep going," and almost there. But the noise was distant to him. His focus was entirely on the girl, and on getting them both safely out of the water. Each step was slow and careful because one wrong move could cause both of them to fall back into the current. The girl was panicking more with each step. Her little legs tried to kick, but the cold water had made them weak. Her arms flailed uncontrollably, and she held tightly to him, her nails digging into his clothes. He could feel her fear, and it pushed him to move faster, even though the river resisted his every step. "It's okay. I've got you. Don't be scared," he repeated, trying to keep his voice calm and steady. He knew that hearing him speak calmly could help her focus and trust him. Even in the chaos of the rushing water, the water swirled around them, and every step was harder than the last. Small waves crashed against his chest, and he could feel the river trying to pull him sideways. He planted his feet carefully on the rocks below, but the slippery stones made it nearly impossible to get a firm grip. His muscles burned from the effort of holding the girl and fighting the current at the same time. He could feel exhaustion creeping in, but he refused to give in. This was not a moment for fear or hesitation. This was a moment that demanded courage and action. As he moved, he thought about the danger of the situation. He could drown if the river caught him, and the girl could slip from his arms if he lost his balance. But fear was not an option. He pushed it aside, focusing only on the path ahead and the child in his arms. His mind moved quickly, planning every step, feeling for the rocks beneath his feet and adjusting his balance as the water tried to sweep him away. The girl, sensing the danger, cried softly and held even tighter. "I'm scared," she whispered between shivers. He smiled gently, even though he was exhausted, and said, "I know, but you're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you. Just hold on to me." Her grip tightened, and for a moment he felt a strange mix of responsibility and determination. Realizing that someone else's life was completely in his hands, time seemed to stretch. Every step felt longer than it should. Every wave seemed stronger. The sun reflected off the water, creating bright flashes that made it hard to see. Small debris floated past, and he had to duck his head to avoid being hit. The river was unpredictable and dangerous, but he refused to let it win. His focus remained on the girl, guiding her safely through the treacherous water at one point. The water rose to his chest, and a strong wave nearly knocked him off balance. He stumbled, feeling the girl's weight shift in his arms. Panic rose for a moment, but he steadied himself quickly, planting his feet firmly on the riverbed and adjusting his hold. The girl's small hands pressed into his chest, and he felt her trembling against him. He whispered softly, "I'm right here. You're okay. We're going to be fine." It felt like hours, though only minutes had passed. Each step was a struggle, each movement against the current a victory. He could see the riverbank approaching, a sliver of solid ground that seemed both far away and so close at the same time. The thought of reaching it gave him strength. But the current continued to fight him every step of the way. The girl's fear began to lessen slightly as he spoke to her gently, holding her as securely as possible. Her sobs became quieter, replaced by soft gasps as she tried to catch her breath. He continued to speak calmly, telling her stories and describing the riverbank, distracting her from the water's strength. "Do you see that big tree? We're almost there. Just a few more steps," he said, pointing toward a large oak that stood firmly at the edge of the river. The girl's small eyes followed his hand, and she nodded, trusting him completely. The current was still strong near the shallow area. Oh! And he had to lift her slightly higher to avoid her slipping. It was exhausting, but he could not let go. Every muscle in his body ached, every breath was heavy, but he pushed through the pain. He thought about her family, imagining how terrified they must be, and that thought gave him even more energy to keep going. As they neared the bank, he could feel the water slowing, becoming less forceful. Relief began to wash over him, but he did not relax. The river was unpredictable, and one wrong move could undo all his effort. Step by step, he guided the girl toward safety, keeping his grip firm and steady. Finally, he reached the shallow edge where the water barely touched his knees. He could see the soft mud and rocks that would provide solid footing. With one final effort, he carefully stepped onto the bank, pulling the girl with him. They stumbled onto dry land, both panting heavily, dripping wet, and trembling from the cold and exertion. The crowd on the bank erupted in cheers and claps. People rushed forward, offering blankets and towels. The girl hugged him tightly, crying and whispering, "Thank you. Thank you so much." He smiled gently, feeling a deep sense of relief and satisfaction. He was exhausted beyond belief, but the sight of her safe and alive made every moment of struggle worth it. The girl's parents ran to them, overwhelmed with emotion. They hugged her tightly, tears streaming down their faces. "We thought we lost her," they exclaimed, thanking him repeatedly. He waved their thanks away, telling them that the important thing was that she was safe. The girl, however, clung to him as if she didn't want to let go. Her trust and gratitude were overwhelming, and he realized that this moment had created a bond between them that could never be broken. Even as the crowd began to disperse, the girl stayed close. She walked beside him, holding his hand and asking questions about him, wanting to know who he was and why he had risked his life for her. He answered as best as he could, still catching his breath, feeling the adrenaline slowly leave his body. Every time he looked at her, he felt a deep sense of responsibility, knowing that his actions had changed her life forever. He thought about the river calm again, as if nothing had happened. The same river that had seemed peaceful and safe just minutes ago had turned into something dangerous and frightening. But in facing that danger, he had discovered a courage he didn't know he had. He had also discovered a sense of connection and humanity that was impossible to ignore. The girl continued to follow him for the rest of the day, refusing to leave his side. They walked along the riverbank, talking softly, her small hand gripping his firmly. He realized that what had begun as a terrifying and dangerous moment had grown into the beginning of something meaningful, a bond built on trust, gratitude, and courage. As the sun began to set, casting warm orange light over the river, he felt a sense of peace. The river, the struggle, and the rescue were all behind them now. But the memory of the fear, the effort, and the triumph would remain with him forever. The girl had survived, and he had been the one to save her. And in that survival, a new story was beginning, one of friendship, courage, and the unbreakable connection formed in the face of danger. The girl finally stood on the riverbank, shivering and drenched, but alive. The relief that washed over him was immense. Every muscle in his body ached, and exhaustion pressed down like a heavy blanket. Yet in that moment, he felt a joy so deep that it almost made the pain disappear. He looked at her little face, her wide eyes now filled with wonder rather than fear, and felt a wave of gratitude from both sides, hers for being saved, his for the miracle of her survival. People around them cheered and clapped, but he barely noticed. Their voices were drowned out by the pounding of his heart. The memories of the river's relentless pull, the overwhelming sense of responsibility he still felt for the girl in his arms. Her breathing was heavy, and she was still trembling from the cold. He knelt beside her, wrapping his jacket around her small shoulders and speaking softly. "It's okay now. You're safe. I won't let anything happen to you." Her tiny hands clutched at his jacket, refusing to let go. He could feel the fear that had gripped her slowly melting into trust. Her parents ran toward them, shouting her name. Their faces were pale, etched with worry, and their eyes filled with tears. When they saw her safe, they embraced her tightly, holding her as if they could protect her from ever being hurt again. "We thought we lost her," her mother cried, her voice breaking. Her father pulled him aside, shaking his hand over and over, thanking him repeatedly. "We can't thank you enough," he said. "You saved our daughter's life." The girl, however, did not want to leave his side. Even as her parents tried to comfort her, she held onto his arm and looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes. "Don't leave me," she whispered. Her voice was soft but filled with urgency, and he realized in that moment that the bond formed in the river was not something that could be broken by a few steps or a few words. She had experienced terror, relief, and safety, all in a matter of minutes. And he had been the one constant through it all. He smiled gently, trying to reassure her. "I'm not going anywhere. You're safe now," he said. But the girl's trust was so immediate and instinctive that she continued to cling to him. The sight of her small, fragile body seeking comfort in his presence brought a lump to his throat. He had never felt such a profound connection to a stranger in such a short amount of time. As the initial chaos of the rescue settled, the girl's parents wrapped her in a dry blanket and checked her carefully. They offered him water and a towel, but he barely noticed, too focused on the girl and the emotions swirling in the moment. The crowd that had gathered slowly began to disperse, murmuring about the brave man who had risked his life, but he barely registered their praise. For him, the real story was not the heroism or the recognition. It was the little girl in front of him, alive, trusting, and grateful. The girl's trembling slowed, and she began to relax slightly, though she continued to hold on to his hand. "What's your name?" she asked softly, her voice filled with curiosity. He knelt to her level, smiling gently. "My name is Armand," he said. "And you?" "Maya," she replied. The simplicity of the exchange felt comforting, grounding him after the intensity of the river. He realized that this small girl, clinging to him after a life-threatening event, had already become an important part of his day, perhaps even his life. Her parents tried to coax her away, insisting she needed to rest, eat, and warm up. But she refused, her small hand gripping his tightly. "I want to stay with him," she said firmly. Her parents exchanged worried glances, but saw the sincerity and fear still lingering in her eyes. They realized that she had formed a bond with him that went beyond logic. The river had created something unbreakable, connection built on trust and survival. They walked slowly away from the riverbank, the girl still holding his hand, reluctant to let go. Every step seemed careful, almost tentative, as if she feared the safety she had found might vanish. Armand spoke to her gently, distracting her with stories about the river, the birds, and the sounds around them. His calm voice helped ease her lingering fear. She listened closely, her wide eyes following every movement and every word. Beginning to relax in his presence, as they moved further from the water, he noticed the exhaustion in her movements. Her tiny shoulders sagged and her steps slowed. He suggested they sit for a moment on a nearby bench, and she immediately nodded, still holding on to him. They sat together, quietly catching their breath. Armand could see the mixture of fear, relief, and curiosity in her eyes. It was clear that this experience would stay with her for a long time. The sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the riverbank. The warm glow made the scene feel almost magical, contrasting with the chaos and fear that had occurred just hours earlier. The river flowed steadily, calm and serene, hiding the danger that had just threatened life. Armand looked at Maya, seeing the small, fragile human who had faced a terrifying situation and had survived. The experience had changed them both, creating a bond that words could not easily describe. They walked slowly back toward the nearby park, Maya occasionally glancing up at him with trust and curiosity. Her parents followed closely behind, allowing her to remain near him, recognizing that she needed this comfort. Every small step she took seemed to deepen the trust between them. She began asking questions about him, where he lived, what he did, and why he had risked his life. He answered carefully, keeping his voice calm and reassuring. Realizing that this simple act of communication was helping her feel secure after such a traumatic experience. Over the next few hours, the initial fear faded, replaced by curiosity and gratitude. Maya stayed close, walking beside Armand wherever he went, asking questions and listening to his stories. She seemed fascinated by the calm confidence he had displayed in the river, and she wanted to know everything about him. The experience had bonded them in a way that few words could explain. She trusted him completely. He felt a sense of responsibility he had never felt before. Her parents eventually invited him to stay for a while longer, offering warm drinks and blankets. He accepted, recognizing that Maya needed to feel safe and secure, and that his presence was helping. They sat together in the cozy warmth of the house, Maya still clinging to his hand, her trust in him unwavering. He felt a deep sense of purpose and fulfillment, realizing that the connection they had formed in the river was only growing stronger. Throughout the evening, Maya continued to follow him wherever he moved. She asked him questions about life, about bravery, and about why people help each other. Armand answered honestly, sharing what he felt during the rescue. He told her how fear and determination had mixed in his mind, how the thought of losing her had pushed him to act, and how relief had washed over him when she was safe. Maya listened intently, her eyes wide with admiration and curiosity. By the time night fell, the house was quiet, and Maya was finally ready to rest. She reluctantly let go of his hand as she was tucked into bed, but even then, she looked at him with trust and gratitude that was impossible to ignore. Armand realized that this day had changed both their lives in profound ways. A terrifying moment by the river had turned into a story of courage, trust, and an unexpected bond that neither of them would ever forget. He stepped outside for a moment. Looking back at the house and the little girl who had survived a near-tragic event, the river was calm, reflecting the moonlight. Almost as if it had returned to its peaceful state, unaware of the danger it had just caused. He felt a mixture of exhaustion and deep satisfaction, knowing that his actions had made a difference. He also understood that this experience had created something beyond simple heroism. It had formed a connection built on trust, courage, and compassion. As he walked home under the night sky, Armand reflected on the day's events. He thought about the fear in Maya's eyes, the strength of the river, and the intensity of the struggle. He realized that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. He also understood that sometimes the bonds we form in moments of crisis can last far longer than we imagine. Maya's trust and admiration were now a part of his life, a reminder of the power of bravery and human connection. Even as he returned to his normal life, he could not shake the memory of Maya's small hands clinging to him, the fear in her eyes turning into relief, and the gratitude that shone in her smile. He knew that the story of the river would stay with him forever, not just as a memory of danger, but as the beginning of a unique friendship and a bond that had been forged in the face of fear. After that terrifying day by the river, life slowly returned to normal, or, at least, as normal as it could be after such an extraordinary event. Armand tried to continue his daily routine, but something had changed within him. The memory of the river, the cold, rushing water, and the tiny hands that had clung to him would not leave his mind. Maya's trust, her wide, grateful eyes, and the bond that had formed in those moments of danger had left a mark on his heart. Every time he thought about that day, a mixture of pride, relief, and responsibility filled him. He knew that their connection was something special, and it had to be nurtured carefully. Maya, on the other hand, seemed unable to let go of him. She followed him everywhere she could, her small, eager presence, a constant reminder of the day that had changed both their lives. At first, Armand had been a little unsure how to handle this. He wanted to give her space to let her return to a normal childhood, but he could also see how much she needed him. Her parents encouraged their friendship, seeing how safe and happy she seemed around him, and they allowed her to spend more and more time in his company. Every visit, every walk, every small conversation strengthened the bond that had begun on the riverbank. The community began to notice the connection between them. Neighbors and friends commented on how attached Maya had become, following Armand around as if he were a part of her family. Armand laughed quietly at first, a little embarrassed by the attention, but he also felt a sense of warmth. It was impossible to deny the happiness that Maya brought into his life, a happiness born out of gratitude, trust, and the shared experience of survival. Every time she ran to him with excitement, he was reminded of the strength of human connection and the ways in which courage can change lives forever. Over the weeks, Armand and Maya spent more time together. They explored the park near the river, played games, and shared stories. She asked countless questions about his life, about bravery, and about the river. He answered patiently, telling her what it had felt like to dive into the water and fight the current, how fear had surged through him, and how relief had flooded him when she was finally safe. Maya listened intently, her eyes wide with admiration and curiosity. It was clear that she saw him not just as a hero, but as a guide, a friend, and someone she could rely on no matter what. Her parents noticed the change in her as well. Maya had grown more confident, calmer, and happier. The fear and panic that had once dominated her life around water had lessened, replaced by a sense of safety and trust. She knew that Armand would always be there to protect her, to guide her, and to support her. The parents were grateful, recognizing that he had not only saved her life, but had also given her a sense of security and stability that was invaluable. Armand, for his part, discovered a joy he had not expected. Spending time with Maya reminded him of the importance of kindness, courage, and human connection. He realized that heroism was not just about dramatic rescues or public recognition. It was also about being there for someone, building trust, and nurturing relationships. Each moment he spent with Maya strengthened his understanding of compassion and responsibility. The river had given him much more than he had imagined it, had given him a friend and a reminder of the impact one person can have on another's life. As the months passed, the bond between Armand and Maya grew even stronger. She began to see him as a mentor, someone who could teach her about bravery, patience, and the beauty of helping others. He encouraged her curiosity, taught her how to respect nature, and explained the importance of being careful and aware. Every lesson was gentle but meaningful, and Maya absorbed them with eagerness. She asked questions about the river, about safety, and about how to act bravely in difficult situations. Armand answered honestly, sharing his experiences and guiding her with care. Their friendship also inspired the community. Neighbors watched as the little girl and the man walked together, sharing laughter and conversation. Some parents even spoke to Armin about the importance of bravery, kindness, and trust, realizing that his example was a lesson for everyone. The story of the river rescue spread quietly but meaningfully, not as a tale of heroism for recognition, but as a story of connection, courage, and the unexpected bonds that can form when people act selflessly. Maya's parents noticed that their daughter seemed happier, more confident, and full of curiosity. She no longer feared the river, no longer panicked at the sight of rushing water. Instead, she saw it as a place of adventure and learning, guided by someone she trusted completely. Armand had shown her that fear could be faced, that courage could overcome danger, that kindness could create lasting bonds. Her parents were thankful, understanding that this friendship was more than a simple companionship, was a life lesson in bravery, trust, and love. Even on quiet days, Maya stayed close. She wanted to accompany Armin on errands, to play in the park, and even just to talk. At first, he had hesitated, wondering if he could handle such constant attention. But over time, he realized that her presence brought him joy and purpose. He learned to embrace the small moments, the laughter, the questions, the shared stories. Each moment reminded him of the river, of the fear, and of the miraculous rescue that had changed both their lives. There were times when Maya would ask him about the day she had fallen into the river. She wanted to hear it again and again, fascinated by the danger and relief, and eager to understand the emotions that had surrounded it. Armand told the story carefully each time, emphasizing bravery, trust, and calm action. He explained the importance of staying focused in emergencies, and how courage sometimes means acting even when you are afraid. Maya listened intently, absorbing the lessons without fear, and her eyes shone with admiration for him, her constant protector. Over time, this bond deepened into something truly special. Maya had come to see Armand as a guardian, a mentor, and a friend. Armand, in turn, had come to understand the responsibility and joy of caring for someone so trusting and vulnerable. They spent countless hours together, exploring the riverbank, talking about life, and sharing small adventures. Each day strengthened the connection formed in those terrifying moments at the river, turning it into a lifelong friendship built on courage, trust, and mutual respect. One day, while walking along the river again, Maya paused and looked at him with serious eyes. "Do you think people can be brave every day?" she asked. Armand smiled gently. "Bravery isn't always about big moments," he said. "Sometimes it's about helping someone, being kind, and facing your fears quietly. You've already been brave, Maya. Remember that." She nodded, her small hand gripping his firmly. He realized that the lessons of the river had extended beyond that day, shaping the way she would face life, challenges, and even fear itself. The river remained a special place for both of them. It was no longer just a site of danger. It had become a symbol of courage, trust, and connection. They returned to it often, sometimes just to sit and talk, sometimes to explore, and sometimes to remember the day that had brought them together. Each visit reinforced the bond between them and reminded them of the power of courage and human kindness. Through this experience, Armand also discovered that heroism is not always recognized in grand gestures. The quiet moments, listening, teaching, protecting, and supporting are just as important. Maya's trust, her laughter, and her admiration were more meaningful than any recognition he could have received. Every time she ran to him with excitement, he was reminded that the real reward of courage is the impact it has on someone else's life. Months turned into years, and the bond between Armand and Maya only grew stronger. The river, once a place of fear, became a backdrop to countless happy memories. They celebrated small victories, explored new places, and shared dreams for the future. The day of the rescue remained in their memories. But it was no longer just a story of danger, it was the beginning of a friendship that would last a lifetime. Armand realized that the river had changed him as much as it had changed Maya. It had taught him about the strength of the human spirit, the importance of trust, and the ways in which courage can create meaningful connections. Maya's presence in his life reminded him daily that even in the most frightening moments, there is the potential for hope, joy, and lasting bonds. As they walked along the river one sunny afternoon, laughing and sharing stories, Armand felt a sense of completeness. The fear, the struggle, and the rescue had led to something beautiful, a friendship built on trust, courage, and care. Maya looked up at him and smiled, a small hand slipping into his. He knew that the bond they had formed in the river was unbreakable, a testament to the power of bravery and human connection. The story of that day and the friendship it created became a quiet inspiration for everyone who witnessed it. Courage, compassion, and trust had not only saved a life, but it also created a bond that would last forever. The river remained, flowing steadily, a silent witness to the bravery, hope, and friendship that had emerged from its waters. And for Armand and Maya, every visit, every conversation, and every shared smile was a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous moments in life can lead to the most beautiful and lasting connections.